Hello and welcome to the Cole Memo. I'm your host, Cole Preston. Every episode is released in audio, video, and transcript format. To find those versions, whichever one you prefer, whether it be audio, video, or if you want to check the transcript, please refer to the description of the episode that you're listening to now. Within that description, you can find a link that will take you to our website, which will display the transcript for this episode and the platforms where you can find this episode in audio or video formats. If you're unable to locate the episode description on whichever platform you're listening from, simply take note of the episode number and visit thecolememo.com. From there, you can use our search functionality to find the corresponding episode, and then you'll be able to access the audio, video, and transcript version of that episode. You might also find any links that we reference during the episode so that you might be able to connect with awesome people like Kirsten. If you're not listening to this episode of the Cole Memo on Patreon, then you're listening to this episode a little bit later than our patrons. To become a patron, go to thecolememo.com/Patreon. It's a great way to support our show. Another way to support our show is at thecolememo.com/support. I want to give a shout out to Tom G, who has been contributing at thecolememo.com/support. You can contribute whatever amount there. But if you're not able to contribute, I just want to say that our show is funded by listeners like you, and it costs a lot to do this. But if you're not able to contribute, one of the best ways to support is absolutely free. Just subscribe to our show, follow it, leave us a positive review from wherever you're listening from. Favorite this episode, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, or share it with your best friend. Your engagement and support is appreciated, and it's truly invaluable. Today is 4/15/2024. We're getting really close to 420. And I'm sitting down with Kirsten, who I've smoked with several times. And usually it's the other way around. Usually it's that I've had somebody on the podcast and then I smoke with them. But I run into you all the time. And I just want to welcome you onto the Cole Memo. Thank you for sitting down with me.
Yeah, I am so psyched to be here because I have tried to do my best to reach out to the community in many, many ways over the last 8, 9 years. And I think that just my own personality is that I would really like to be engaged with the community and hear what they have to say, as opposed to, let's say, tooting my own horn. I'm very much a cheerleader for other people. And so, yeah, I'm super psyched to be here. And I guess I could talk about myself.
Yeah, please do tell us. I don't want to say. I want to say just again that the links will be in the podcast description for the website and to connect with Kirsten on social media. But Kirsten, tell us about yourself and what you do, please.
Okay. I'm not going to start from the day I was born, but from the day that my niece told me that there was going to be medical cannabis in Illinois, and you could have knocked me over with a feather because I didn't expect the legislature to accomplish that. And in Illinois, if you haven't been on the pulse like Cole and I have been, it's the only state that passed it through legislative process, where some other states might put it on a ballot and a majority of people say, yes, we want this. And that's when the legislature of that state takes on the burden of actually creating rules and laws surrounding the program. So when my niece told me that, it was because she had been promoting and advocating for medical cannabis for years because of her chronic illness. And that's one thing about getting into cannabis, is you realize that the burden has been on the shoulders of a lot of critically ill people and their families. And I don't know if that works for you, but that is definitely a perfect like mission trigger for me when I saw that the people least likely to have the abilities and the resources to do things for the community still managed to pull this off for all of us. So I felt like it was my duty to go out and really engage with the community. And I went to my office and I got this old 3-ring binder, and all these little tabs are all the names of the original companies that won licenses in Illinois. And I had been down to that Thompson building where they had the rule-making process. And I was there, and you get to stand up and speak. And I could even feel myself right now getting nervous about how I had to go up there and speak publicly for the first time and say, do you realize that you're writing discrimination which is against the Constitution, into this law. And that main thing hurt me, which was they're going to fingerprint everyone, specifically to exclude any drug-specific felonies. I mean, you could have convicted of fraud or murder and get a felony that way, and you could still get in the medical program, but if you had a drug felony, you were excluded. And like, I've been really, this is not a therapy session with you, but it kind of feels like it because of bringing up all these things that kind of hit to the heart of me, because I have felons in my family from drugs. I was arrested for drugs in high school. And even though I was raised by a really thoughtful Catholic family, you know, this was just the war on drugs ended up being a part of our teenage years. And, you know, I've been so grateful that, you know, they closed the books on that if it happened before you were 18. But nevertheless, the shame and the intimidation is always there. You always feel like you never probably had opportunities or accomplished as much as you wanted because of that past. So when I got into the program and started looking at the rules and the licensing, it made me see that the seeds of its own destruction were sown right in. And I saw that with the licensing, the lottery, the, you know, lack of likelihood of anybody to even get it, even though the state got to pocket all of those application fees, and then the lottery was just whoever, you know. And so I remember you having on somebody who later became sort of notorious, and she sort of insinuated that someone may have gotten killed, you know, but I think he did die of natural causes. But you can see how with a program that felt like people were being excluded because it was very much a oligarchy. I know that, you know, I don't want to throw around that word lightly, but if you have to have millions of dollars in a bond, you have to have friends in high places, or you're in a high place yourself to even be able to participate in this. So I have even recently talked to, and this might be something to put your investigative talents to, is that I talked to a guy who's been in the industry for a really long time. And he said there are so many of these new dispensaries that have barely gotten on their feet, and now they don't have the money to pay the re-up on the yearly license. And that means, and just watch my claw come down, the big boys or somebody else can come pop right in. And then to add and illustrate, and I'll get back to the meat of the bones, but I'm jumping all over the place. I had a little hitty poo before we started, and I feel like it's fun on your podcast to kind of be buzzed and roll all over the place. My daughter has been working at dispensaries over the past few years, and she just started at Bizalina, real close by, Carroll Stream. And I think that some of the new dispensary owners may have come from a different state, or they have experience in different industries, finance maybe. And I think that the regulatory requirements and the expenses hit them like a ton of bricks. And being that I have worked in service my whole life, and I knew that these were first and foremost a retail establishment, like working at a mall. You're open 9 to 9. You have to rely on people who are willing to take an hourly salary. And I felt like that was just as much of a challenge for inexperienced people as much as these insane regulatory requirements. And like every time I repeat this, I think this can't be the correct statistic, but it's those security cameras in the dispensaries. They're $300 a month, each one of them. And there's like 40. And so those are just the part of the security fees that they have to pay in order to keep those places compliant, so that they're always on a live feed to the Illinois State Police. And for example, if somebody would cut off whatever cable is providing that feed, that dispensary would have to shut down for that time. So do you see how, like, it's almost like I saw behind the curtain and saw too much. Do you want to jump in here and have a crack at anything? Because I'll go on a tear.
No, no. I
Okay.
mean,
All
I
right.
could, but I like kind of letting you go. This is
Okay, cool,
awesome.
cool. Okay, so when I saw how onerous the application process was, I said these license winners are going to be so preoccupied that they are not going to have any time to think about what I consider to be marketing. And that marketing is education and engagement with the community and relationship building. And one of the main things to do would be to like go to every city council, every local business community, and you would have to talk to them and say, hey, let's get straight about what this is going to do for your community, beginning, middle, and end. And that way, when people come looking for real estate, you'll think of it as an opportunity as opposed to not in my backyard, NIMBY, we call it. So with that mission trigger set, I trained myself through Toastmasters. Have you heard of Toastmasters, Public Speaking Club? And I did their program, taught me a lot. And I also met people who were like, yeah, I give educational programs at libraries. And I'm like, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. And I sent proposals to all the libraries I was willing to drive to. And at first I was like, please, please, just let me do this. I'll do it for free. And I went 2 times to a little library in Jacksonville, Illinois, which is just west of Springfield. And, that kind of got the ball rolling. If you get one librarian who really thinks that you did a good job, they will refer you to the other libraries. So I felt like in my own way, and I really was out there doing things that nobody had ever done before, like being paid by the government to teach about cannabis. And as the time went by, I really was able to develop a program that addressed people's needs. And it wasn't about me talking about how cool I thought weed was. I had all of this, and I'm sure you were the same way. We're like, oh, we weren't taught that about cannabis. We were taught it was going to hurt us really badly. And here I was hiding in my bathroom trying to cover up the smell of a one hitter. And then I read about how it has anti-inflammatory qualities, and there's just a dearth of scientific studies about it. And that cognitive dissonance and mental shift, I thought was just an incredible thing. And that I had to teach that. But when I really designed my program, it was only tell them the essence of what will make them comfortable and how they can put it into their lives. And don't do anything over really 20, 25 minutes, because people don't have the ability to process a lot of intense information. And underlying all of that sweet choreography of what I was doing there, I was in fact disrupting their firmly founded, marinated beliefs of cannabis being bad gateway drug. So psychologically, I took all that in, and here was my naivety. I was like, just let these companies get the cement dry and
Right.
open up their doors, and they'll realize how important all this education and outreach is. And then they will appreciate and value what I have been doing. And I don't think it worked out that way. I wasn't like I had salaried jobs. I was like, go get an opportunity to speak and then ask for someone to sponsor it. And it was kind of in reverse, where I should have gotten, the money and the
Hmm.
sponsorship support and then go out and get the educating. And I would say that if I had to get into their minds, it would be they came to what I was doing as a risk. Like, oh no, what's she going to say? Is that going to get us into trouble? And for me, that kind of blindsided me, because I was like, I've been out there doing this on my own and I've never gotten any blowback and I'm perfectly comfortable with it. But that was kind of a common thing for me, where I was like, oh, I'm doing things that no one has ever done before. So it scares them. And they're like, oh God, Kirsten, what is she going to do next? She's so unpredictable. So anyway, I nevertheless was out there just trying to make a way. One thing leads to another. I get a part-time job at the Floramedics dispensary in Elmwood Park. And shortly after that, Cresco bought them. And I was so excited because I was only there, you know, as a goof around, lots of experience. And Cresco had always been a supporter of Illinois women in cannabis. And I had been a board member of Illinois Women in Cannabis for 5 years and had spearheaded their cannabis education campaign, where we reached out to other advocates to do education programs in their communities. And I was like, this is my connect. This is going to be awesome. I'm going to ask them to do advocacy in this area that's been where I'm working right there in Elmwood Park. And it's been so neglected. It'll be awesome. And almost with the same sort of, you know, whipping around at the end of a dragon's tail as this whole industry has developed, I had 4 bosses at the same time there. So that they didn't know what they were doing. Those people were, you know, not up to the skill level that I was. And you can tell that, like, if I say something to people, you know, Kirsten, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. You know, so I don't know. I don't know if that's what it was, but you know, everybody's, you know, running around like a chicken with their head cut off, and it wasn't going to work out. And it was really sort of the same thing with my 5 years at Illinois Women in Cannabis, where I felt like we really tried to put some rubber to the road, but it was somewhat of a circular cycle that just ripped through the resources that we were given without making the impact that I thought would help all of these licensees who were in fact paying, you know, for sponsorships and things. So I'm sure that you understand that how slow and grinding things can be to really get things done in the industry. And now you kind of started off showing me and posting my vape and prop,
Yeah.
which doesn't really seem to have anything to do with advocacy and education. And so this just goes to show that, like, I haven't even told you about all the other stuff I've done. But I have been inventing for a really long time. And when I did my research out there, I was like, hey, these vape pens, they don't work well if they lay on their side. They can get leaky or roll around, get lost, broken, that type of thing. So yeah, keep it up, never lose it. Vertical is the peak position for perfect performance. The content for this little device writes itself. So I was helping people get their cannabis licenses, teaching them how to apply, helping them get doctors who would verify their eligibility for the program, you know, continuing with the mission. And I taught myself 3D design. And right, it's so much fun doing these. It really, really taps into my creative side. It really is something that I can spend hours fully engrossed in the 3D design process. And when I show you, and Cole shows you his designs that he has, this is a massive evolution. You know, when I was first vaping, everything was pen shaped like this, just a cylinder, you know, everything was. And as soon as I got a perfectly functioning, flexible 3D print, out came the crazy shapes like the Steezy. And then this was the ultimate challenge. As soon as I got it figured out for the Steezy, then these Bloom pens that look like a surfboard slash suppository. By the way, I love these pens so much. Shout out to Bloom, shout out to Robbie at Bloom and all the team. And when this came out, I'm like, all right, fine, challenge accepted. And I put all of the finest nuances, and you can see here that it's not the puzzle piece like we've been showing you. It is what I call the Omni with lots and lots of detail. And the base you can see is the actual Bloom logo. Absolutely beautiful. And these are 3D printed samples. And in my mind, I was like, hey, this is going to be fabulous. I'll 3D design people's logos into the base so that as a vape is protected, ready at all times in the perfect position for peak performance. And you can see, you can leave it on, take a hit. Wonderful. They're going to love that. Companies are going to think it's the best thing ever. I just thought this was a crackerjack and this is going to be fantastic. But as everyone needs to do, and hopefully you'll be able to relate to this, and I'm sure everybody else, pivoting. You've got to change your business model so that it meets them where they are and finds their touch point that helps them out. And so that's why I decided that the standard promo merch model is you just get an item, a t-shirt, a fanny pack, a lanyard, and you just hand over your logo. And the next thing you know, you have this beautiful merchandise. And you will see I have the standard cylinder that is flexible and holds anything between 9 and 14 millimeters. And I've added onto it the Omni that holds everything. And it even holds like a big bulky product like a Lucas Seahorse Pro. So even though my sensibility is for vape, I find it convenient and discreet. 60% of the sales market is flower still. However, let's say last year it was 19% was vaping, the share of the market, and 1 year later it was 23%. So the growth in vaping is unparalleled. And I think that people are seeing that. They're like, hey, this is convenient, it's discreet, it's quick, there's no ash, there's no smell. And again, because it's kind of a growth industry in a growth industry, I really felt like once I had this clever puzzle design, and imagine going to a show or a conference and saying, oh, there are two brands that have the puzzle piece I can collect and connect. And when you get home with your sesh set up, you can have all of your devices, and even these little open holes, they are the size of a 510 cart. So you can make it a little bit of a organizational storage device, or again, you can use them individually and just make sure that that one by in your kitchen, your bedside, the bathroom, your office is always right there to take it inhalation. So once I felt super happy with that design in that it's accommodating to their needs, then I had the injection mold made. And that was a scary thing because I had been, I'm like, let's make it in America. Let's talk to some people and see if like it'd be, save time and save a little bit of money not having to ship all the way from overseas. And I came up empty. And then I went on to Alibaba, and I know it's going to sound crazy. People are going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe you went to Alibaba. You never know what'll happen there. But I did it. I had 11,000 pieces show up. And right when I got back from Spanibus in Barcelona, I was able to put 8,000 of these Curaleaf imprints on these beautiful puzzle pieces. And they've been distributed to 34 dispensaries in 5 states. So it's mostly for this, like, that's what's so great about talking to you this week. It's 420. It's a huge order. I hope that it'll get so much awareness out there that it'll get that, like, hey, do you remember Beanie Babies and how everybody went insane and started collecting them?
Yep.
And do you remember, this was called Silly Bands. You remember Silly Bands? Okay, everybody, you could go to the Walgreens.
Those things were lit when I was a kid.
Okay, I love it. I'm so glad you get it, my reference. You would go get this bag of random colored rubber bands, but when you opened up the pouch, you never know what shape that rubber band was going to be. A trumpet, an elephant, something like that. So, yeah, I love it. Excellent. Yep, there you go. Silly Bands. Think about how much fun it was to go to school and tell the kids, this is what I got in my pack.
Yep. Here's a picture of me and my best friend. I'm
there
just
you
joking.
go.
That's not actually me, but yeah. Anyway, sorry.
I love it. Nostalgia, hardcore nostalgia. So I really feel that after, really getting to sesh with friends and come out into the legalized adult use community. And again, using that legalized term pretty loosely there, Cole, right? I feel like these really tap into a little bit of a obsession with accessories that people have in the community. I know I went through my phases where I was like, oh, I need that Yocan Plus, and I need to upgrade to a better battery. And then now I've got my Seahorse Pro. This
It's
is
also
like,
just frustrating when you pick up a vape pen and it's like it like has that little clog moment. Like
yep,
this prevents that pretty well,
yes,
you know.
yes. And does the
So
tip on that vape have is it metal? That particular vape you have?
honestly, this vape's not mine, so I do not know.
It's not a metal tip because some of them are plastic, some of them are
Oh,
metal. And
this is plastic. Yeah, this
okay,
tip's
yeah, the
plastic.
metal ones, the Juice pens by Nature's Grace. I don't have one right now. They are metal and they tend to clog because the metal tip cools off the oil and makes it clog up a little bit. You know, it's that temperature sensitivity. A lot of people will say to me, "Oh yeah, do you make these for nicotine vapes?" You know, people are into their nic vapes too. But nicotine juice, is less viscous, meaning the cannabis oils
Mm,
really need to have that time to flow
right,
down
right.
toward the heating element. So right now I'm focusing on that. So what do you think about my theory with collect and connect, Cole?
Oh, yeah, I like it. It's cool. It's cool. And I definitely like I see your connection, pun intended, to
Mm-hmm.
silly bands and like you know, trends like that. And I definitely think that yeah, with with as much as people consume cannabis vapes and, you know, try to take care of them, I think yeah, whenever I have vapes, I use them. And like I said before we got on air, I grabbed the one that I showed, the blue one, because I plan to maybe have a giveaway in the future, and this will be one of the gifts. And Kirsten told me that this is actually a limited edition one you'd be getting, so like no longer, and it'd be a little piece of history for you.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I thought about it before I came into my office, and I was like, I bet you we have one of these in use right now. And lo and behold, I went into an office and there was one sitting on the desk. So yeah. So I was like, yeah, I'll grab that. That's perfect. That'll work for the
And
podcast.
really, you can see like the joy in my face knowing that it's right there, you know, serving a purpose. It's
Hmm.
fun and it's functional. But having given so much of my mission to helping people understand and accept and utilize cannabis as a strategy that's ready and for them when they are, my vape and prop in its own way is like, hey, it's there for you. You
Yeah.
know, it's there for you. It wants to protect, it wants to provide a service. And it's one of those things that when you ask yourself as an entrepreneur, oh, you know, what do I think would be cool enough to really be dedicated to? And it's sort of a natural evolution of things that happen. But those elements for your own personal benefit have to be there. The creativity, touching on mission points that you think that will make a difference to people. And yeah, you've got to have that. And I have invented a lot of things over the years. I have many previous lives, and I just want to, I just kind of the perfect person to go out and say cannabis out loud because I don't think I look like a traditional stoner. So it makes me easy to approach. But in my inventing life, I realized that you can have a really good idea, but it might not have that easy link to market or to the community that you need to reach. And things have certainly opened up in some aspects as far as having the digital world and the internet community, even though it ends up being a lot of static and where people's attention is divided a lot.
Right.
But with some of my other inventions, there was an educational point to it where some people don't really want to take the time to learn something new, or it was too big and bulky to ship financially effectively. Um, you know, hard to manufacture, things like that. So if you have a product that you can kind of look at for a second and be like, oh, I can figure this out. This looks like you stick something in it. You know, it has that easy to adapt quality where you can visually inspect it and know what it is. So if anybody's out there, you know, living that entrepreneurial life and wondering, you know, you will have to evolve and pivot and adapt and learn. And that's how I met Cole is I just think that last year we went to between 150 and 200 events. And I was so lucky to be, because of that networking, I was so lucky to be included in the Cannabis Innovation Lab that was hosted by 1871 and grown in. Shout out to Brad Spearson and Marcy Alspach. And I really thought, this is it. I'm the Cannabis Innovation Lab, and investors going to pick up my thing, and it's going to be great. But it didn't happen exactly like that, but it really did go back a little bit more to keep networking, keep meeting people. And especially if you're in cannabis, you have to do that. Why? Because if you get a lead, that person's probably going to get laid off or quit or get fired. There is a lot of turnover in the industry. So you've got to constantly be out there making relationships. And I know I've basically carpeted Chicago with vape and props so that people can try it out.
Hell yeah.
So thank you to the people who actually went to my website and bought them. You will have a limited edition collectible, I promise you, for supporting me truly
And
as
I was
I've
going to
been.
ask you, is that how people, if you just go to vapeandprop.com that we showed earlier, that's how you can just directly buy them for yourself?
That's right. That's right. I've
Perfect.
loaded up some fairly fresh models on there recently, and you can use the free shipping code BOSS in all caps, BOSS, because I'm the boss,
Hell
and
yeah.
I can let you get free shipping because I'm the boss.
I was gonna say that's some boss shit right there. That's some
Yeah.
boss shit. Hell yeah. And if you want to follow Kirsten on Instagram, you can follow them at Puff and Prop. I'm displaying it right now on my screen. And once again, the link will be in the show notes. So connect with them and share your good vibes. Um, so so yeah.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
tell me your whole life story now.
No, it was interesting because you went on to that, and I was like, I didn't want to cut you, but that one point when you asked me like, did you want to say something? And I was like, well, I did want you to like say at the top your show, but I like how you did it actually. I'm glad I stepped back because you made the point of like, I haven't even talked about what I invented yet. This is just to show you like how, passionate I am. So I'm glad I didn't get in the way of you.
You're
Um,
very sweet. You're a great interviewer. Maybe you'll get to interview Obama.
That'd be crazy. That'd be crazy. I did just put a request in. I don't think Obama's going to be there, but I put a request in for the DNC convention in Chicago, which I know Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the vice president, will be there, and the president, and I believe Governor Pritzker will be there. I believe he's hosting it. So. I would, that's one person I'd love to just sit down and have an honest conversation with. Like, it would be really cool to like not only talk about cannabis, but talk about some of the other things that you have to deal with as a governor, and how you navigate these things. Because it's interesting, people forget like that the governor and especially the president, like people forget what we were taught in civics, where it's like they don't write the laws. And in fact, they really should kind of stay out of it. Like, I, it's interesting how State of the Unions, and I think this is normal now, but like the State of the Union and the president, they kind of will lay out, and it's always been normal. They'll lay out what they will sign into law because when it comes down to it, that is the end all be all. Goes through the House, goes through the Senate, and then the president has to sign it. If he vetoes it, then it goes through that whole process. But
Mhm.
um I guess it just seems like people have forgotten like the role, like the president is just supposed to preside. Like he's really not supposed to like the whole executive order thing that happens. Like especially like during the last presidential election was just like weird and like it's just a weird way to do things. Anyways, I'm off on a tangent. I
Oh no,
really would.
okay. So you kind of started with, I'd really like to talk to JB Pritzker, and the legislative process ties his hands. And I
Yeah,
would say
that's
that
yeah.
if you really got to, give him whatever that nitrous oxide is, the truth serum, he would be like, half of my job is getting the legislators to give me something to
Right,
sign.
right.
And then the other half is maintaining and corralling power. Because you see how behind the scenes, if he doesn't stay in power, then he's not going to get any of his legislative hopes and dreams through. And even though he is wealthy, I do think and understands the churning of the wheels of government and accepts how things get done. I do think he wants the best for the state.
Yeah. And that's why I think it'd be interesting to like I know that like I feel like if I posted it out of context on my Instagram, people would be like, "Go get him!" And I'm like, "That's not what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would
yeah.
be doing. I would love to just sit down and talk to him, and yes, I would have probably a longer conversation about cannabis because that's what I know. But I'd love to learn more about what they do in that role. You know what I mean?
Right. I loved what you said about, I think we forget what we learned in civics class. And I just chuckled because I'm like, civics class? Did I have a civics class? And I think a lot of people be like, I don't know, did they not require a civics class? But, you know, we had government, we had to get through that. And I do remember, you know, those processes, especially, you know, if you're not in cannabis, you're probably not lobbying or in, you know, lobbying organizations. So you probably are detached from how the process works. And as things have gotten weirder, it is so much more fun to point our ire and our blame at one person. And which it you guys, you remember, oh, my coffee is cold. Thanks, Obama.
Yeah, right.
We just, it was just such a silly meme, sarcastic thing that we used to do. But nevertheless, I think that's what you're getting at, where, you know, if you were to say a nice thing about a politician, they would smoke you like a pack of cools on the social media.
Right. And like a lot of people um say I've heard from a few different people and I get the impression that people just like think this show is negative and it's always like bitching about the legal cannabis and you even said it earlier like legal cannabis like I'm kind of known for really talking about that and everything and I just like I don't mean to be negative about it. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Right.
just
Okay.
trying to
So
point out that what I perceive to be the, truth of the problem, you know?
absolutely. And listen, the frustration is baked in, and that sounds like you're bitching, but it means that you're focused on changing things for the better. And, you know, as I stated right at the beginning, I couldn't believe we legislatively even passed medical cannabis in Illinois, because I think that my cynicism was equal to everybody else's, where you're like, Government doesn't actually do anything. They're pointless, you know? So I think it's actually helped me to appreciate the work that gets done, but there's nothing like the fury I have for the things that have not been done. So I'm right there with you. I think that's part
Yeah.
of the reason why I'm so into your podcast, your vlog, because you're hitting on those points and I'm like, yeah, you're carrying the load, you know, you're getting out there and you're explaining these are things that are fundamentally unjust, fundamentally unconstitutional, and it makes you feel like you're an alien when you're down here and you're watching how people perpetuate these destructive behaviors. And we could talk about something as simple as alcohol. And I think that someone posted, hey, do you think it's okay for a cannabis company to be sort of tilting their marketing toward teenagers? And again, it's not what you say, Kirsten, it's how you say it. I chimed right in with, oh my God, starting from harm reduction, we should totally be promoting cannabis to teenagers. Oh my God, are you going to have to cut this out of your
No, no.
But do you understand? Like, when I know what I know, and I know that
Hmm.
alcohol is the original date rape drug, you know, teenagers. And I think that they are smarter now. And I think teenagers are consuming less alcohol. And I think teenagers are using cannabis as a mental health alternative, when sometimes you have parents who were raised in the era of there is no such thing as mental health. We don't talk about that here. And, you know, we're breaking out of that very quickly, but having younger people understand the value means that they will incorporate it into their life as a natural health strategy, physical and mental, as opposed to going through this experimental phase like I did. And I was like, what do you got? I want to try that. What's that
Hmm.
going to do? Dangerously, right? And I feel like when I was at Spanibus just recently, and the people were like, oh, we have this party and it's fantastic. And I go, oh my God, do people get wasted? And they're like, they party, but they don't get wasted. And you see how like my American culture imagines the wastoids who,
Right.
do the stupid things. So because their culture has always had this more integrative approach to how they consume alcohol, they have, I feel, there less alcohol abuse. So if you approach it like that with teenagers with lots of education and awareness, and especially if they see their parents consuming cannabis, they're going to be like, oh, my parents, they're so uncool. I don't even want to have cannabis. But you see what I'm saying? It sounds completely like, again, that you should edit it out that I said, yes, we should market cannabis to teenagers, but as a harm reduction method, and then everything else I listed, I really feel like when we have those insanely accepting attitudes about alcohol, that's a lot more insane
Right.
than educating teenagers about what cannabis actually is,
Yeah.
or as an
Well,
alternative to other experimental things.
right. Um, yeah, I have an interview with a teenager coming out soon, a high schooler, that's a junior that apparent, I was able to, because I was just curious, and they just so happened to be a teenager that went to the hospital for hemp derived products.
Oh my gosh. Was that recently? Or
Yeah,
like
within
within the last year, maybe?
yeah.
Okay.
So I'll
Ooh,
drop
that's
that
exciting.
soon-ish. Just trying to edit it. It was interesting. I didn't like all I did was ask questions because I don't want to be seen as like pushing a teen in any certain direction. So I just asked like, "Hey, what's it like to be a high schooler right now?" We just started with questions as simple as that, and then it's like, "Do any of your friends do drugs?" You know, and how do they get those drugs? And yeah, it's interesting conversation. So, you know,
I can't wait to listen to it. And I have two questions for you. You're on the
hmm
pulse. How do you feel about the legislation that's making it through in Illinois to impede hemp-derived products? And what do you think about Germany throwing the switch and having adult use in Europe?
well, the adult use in Europe, uh, Germany, that's super cool. And I actually know somebody who I think was there when it got legalized. So stay tuned for that, folks. They might be able to like give us a boots on, like what it was like to be there in the moment or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But very exciting on the Germany thing. The hemp thing is a complicated one for me because uh, I understand where people are coming from with the idea that you want it to be like tested and everything, but what I've started to learn is that saying that it's untested or saying that it's like when you hold up a bag of Frito chips or sour trolleys that are Delta 8 infused, like that's already copyright infringement, and that in and of itself is a crime. And that if you're a licensed business and you're selling those, like that truly is what the problem is. Um, right there, like it's not so much that the Delta 8 is in it that's the problem, you know. I don't think, or whatever it is that's in it. I do think that, there should be truth in testing, but again, to that point, from what I understand, like no matter what product you sell, if it's consumable, it's not like from what I understand, it's not like just because the hemp or the farm bill happened that there's like that you can fucking put heavy metals in your product. Like we have food standards.
Yes.
So like it's complicated because what's really being said is we want you to be tested under the state regulated program. When they say that these are unlicensed businesses, that's often not true. They open up their storefront with a business license, they get zoning and they go to the municipality and talk to their township, and they are a business, they're a licensed business, but they're not a licensed cannabis business under the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. So when
Correct.
they say unlicensed, it's like uh it's a little bit of a misnomer, and I understand their point when these places call themselves dispensaries and they're not state licensed dispensaries, but I mean, it just seems like a stretch. And I also just want to briefly acknowledge that I'm under the impression that there are not great actors in the space. I I've been told that. I personally, this is the other weird part of this whole thing is that I personally don't like consume Delta 8 products. I have, and recently I bought the snoozeberries, which are by GTI. They're a Delta 8 product. Um, I bought it out of a tobacco head shop. GTI sells them as hemp now.
I
So
think yeah,
yeah,
I was,
they're pretty good, honestly. Like they put me to sleep, and I only eat like I've when I ate them, I only ate two. And believe me, I don't feel good because, like, generally speaking, I don't support like the for what I've seen GTI say in the past. Maybe they're different today, but what I've seen them say in the past, I don't totally agree with some of the stances they take. So it feels weird buying their product. But when I see an Illinois licensed, a licensed, I almost there I did it. I just did it. Licensed under the CRTA, selling hemp. I always think that's interesting because I've interviewed a few on the show where they've got both licenses. You know what I mean? So just to wrap up, I have complicated feelings on this, but at the end of the day, I don't believe that, like, even if it's not criminal enforcement, even if it's like high fines, like I feel like there are already fines established, and I worry that the opposite effect, it'll actually get worse if you do this because realize that this is just going to shut down the businesses in state. You can still get it all via mail because they can't do that. That would be violating the Dormant Commerce Clause. And I'm no lawyer, but I understand that much about the law. And that's how they're going to put a pause on these sales. But like I say, just to wrap, there are three different proposals. I don't know how I feel about any of them. Um, I personally think that if nothing happened, that would be honestly okay. I think what we need to do, if there's really an issue, is enforce the laws that are on the books about truth in advertising, copyright infringement. Like you can look up the Chicago Sun-Times. Mars Wrigley has sued cannabis companies before for infringing on their cannabis or on their products. I'll display it on my screen right now, and I'll turn it over to you, Kirsten, because I feel like I've pretty much like this is weird because I don't really care for these products, but if your concern is that these products are dangerous, I worry that if you push anybody into the shadows, that only makes them more dangerous. That's my concern. I don't even care to consume them, but if you're, anyways, to you.
okay. To me, okay. Well, I'll make it as brief as I possibly can. When you show me that, if I was Wrigley or Mars or whoever, I would sue because you can't take the likenesses that I've invested and built up through marketing and then promote your on my work on my back. That's completely justified. Then we have to deal with the reality of the thriving legacy market. It is gangbusters out there. The cat's out the bag. It doesn't matter whether it's Delta 9, Delta 8, THCA. There is a thriving, excuse me, thriving legacy market. So they have harnessed a fabulous industry in Illinois, making tons and tons of tax to the point where people don't even remember there's a medical program. But I'm going to say probably what, 70% of actual business in Illinois is legacy because people were getting their cannabis and things have only advanced with concentrates and vapes and edibles over the years. And as much trouble as I've had on Instagram trying to grow a community, every day I get a follow from somebody who's clearly just, got a little business going. And so it makes me that much more aware of how stifling the businesses, the new hemp businesses, creates more problems, like you just said, and that they should be like, if the quality of the product they're producing meets the standards that everybody expects. And then I think that the acetone process that they use to convert hemp cannabinoids into Delta 8, who knows what it really is. Is it
Right.
HHC? Is it THCO? Is it HH whatever? So they're calling it Delta 8, and it may be having, similar effects. And how would you know? You know what I'm saying? You get a little bit of a different effect each time. So I feel like the legislative process is a chicken running around with its head cut off because it's not uh, being effective and modern and up to date about their approaches, and that their burdensome regulations and taxations on the CRTA license over loan owners will undermine their businesses. And you have seen the GTI with the Delta 8 product, and it's like, if you can't beat them, join them, right? Same
Right.
way with the THCA, where I think we saw True Leave in Florida say, hey, we're going to approach the federal government and say, all the flour and concentrates we've been selling are THCA. They have not been decarboxylated like they get when they get heated. Therefore, we never did sell anything that wasn't hemp. It was all THCA.
I know of originally licensed cannabis operators in this state. I say originally licensed because I mean under the medical law, um, that purchase THCA biomass in mass, in bulk, to use in their products because you can. There's a variance that allows you to use hemp-derived cannabinoids in your products. I always like to say that the first Delta 8 product I ever tried was from the brand you just displayed, Curaleaf, a grassroots Delta 8 pin in 2019. I've got a picture of it. Um,
Wow.
and so that shows you that it can be regulated. Obviously, it can be sold on our shelves,
Yeah, and
right?
held to a high standard. And I really think, and this is something like the adult use markets have always said, well, we want to hold ourselves to a higher standard because we're always so afraid of any blowback, especially when the standard community already has, a massive chip on their shoulder about our industry. And then, even though it wasn't the legal market, it has really been burdensome to overcome this vaping crisis that we had, where people are like, I don't know, vapes, they might get illegalized because there might be problems with them. Vapes are going nowhere. I guarantee.
Yeah.
People love them. They're proven safe.
I
And
think that
just
vaping
like,
crisis was a PR push from cigarettes. They're trying to take out the vapes.
oh, isn't
Get
that interesting? Well, did you
I'm
see
just
Big
fanning.
Vape on the documentary? The
No,
Big Vape
I
documentary?
haven't. No.
Well, Juul.
Mm,
Juul is like the original vape. And I felt like, oh my God, this is how the oligarchy works, because young students at Stanford were given a whole bunch of money because they thought it was a great idea. And they didn't even have a working product. And they
yeah.
got investment capital over and over again. And,
Mhm.
it turned into a moneymaker. And you know how you were talking about the Delta 8 and, the quality of the processes and things like that. We now have all of these extra plant derived terpenes and flavorings and things like that. And I think that those slightly synthetic artificial things may play an irritating factor in some products too. And then, it gets lumped in with everything. And
Yeah.
it's just everybody looking for a justification for, oh, we shouldn't have done this. This is the proof.
Yeah. And you just reminded me that the botanist Ry Pritchard, do you know Ry Pritchard off of
Yes,
the
I
show
do.
Bong Appetit? Yeah, he was on this show once. I saw on Reddit recently he posted that they use hemp derived terps in their vapes, which give them the distinct flavor, as he I believe said in the post. So fresh hemp terps, which is interesting. It's like another example of them using hemp in their products. So it's yeah, like it's an
It's
interesting
ubiquitous.
yeah, it's an interesting field, and I'm curious, like you said to the what did you say about GTI? It's like go along to get along, or
If you can't beat them, join them.
if you can't beat them, join them. Yep. Um, there was a very interesting question asked in that press conference. It was so was the problem that we legalized it? And I didn't know what they meant at the time, but after revisiting it with a friend, it was interesting to think that, like, yeah, some of these people that are licensed under the state systems are also selling it in the hemp market, and like they can sell them anywhere uh without the $300 a camera per camera live
You,
feed to the Illinois
trust
State
me, look it
Police.
up, call somebody to verify,
No,
because
I
like I
believe
said,
you
every time
because
I think of it, I'm like, my God, that is
I've just
insane.
been waiting how to rope that in. So I believe you. That was a perfect tie-in. I feel like, like all these different things that are restrictive, you don't have to put up with. It's interesting. That whole press conference seemed to be like a pitch for hemp, actually,
Oh,
because they were talking about like in some of the things you brought up, the onerous regulations, everything you have to put up with. It's like you don't have to put up with the bullshit regulations with hemp. Yes, you actually do have to make sure that your stuff is like it's not you're not falsely advertising and poisoning people. Like you can still sue entities for that. And so like yeah, if they're like you say this acetone stuff and all that stuff, I agree with you. People bring that up and I'm like, yeah, that needs to stop. Like we really need to look into that. Sometimes people bring up they'll say like that other things are in it too. I'm trying to think of what other chemical they've said like the chemical that they use when you die to preserve your blood or preserve, like make it so that your body doesn't decompose and you can have a funeral. What's it called?
formaldehyde.
Formaldehyde. Thank you. They've somebody actually our cannabis regulation oversight officer said that there's been stories of these vapes with formaldehyde. And I did find one story, it was very old. It was during the vape crisis, that referenced the possibility, I think, of formaldehyde. I can look that up just to be sure. Um, anyways, if that shit is going on, I think, all agree that's a problem. Um,
Okay. And your statement was the mistake legalization?
right,
And that just stopped me cold, because we know that prohibition is the problem. And the only reason why people would be subject to a formaldehyde tainted vape cart is because they don't have access, safe access. And we are living with feet in both worlds, where people are subject to whatever they can get, or, and they're probably feel lucky to be able to get D8 or D8 carts or D8 edibles. Um, and now in our world, people are like, we are solventless. Everything is live resin, and there is such a, just like the spectrum of, your beer can be cheap or your beer can be super bougie. I feel like because we are so lucky in Chicago and Cole, I'm telling you, I went to Spanish in Barcelona, and Chicago was #1 in the world for events and branding
oh
and
yeah,
experience. We are so spoiled here. But when you can see that when all of the barriers necessary are removed, people are going to have access to solventless material that they know hasn't been tainted or
right.
altered or anything like that. And we'll start to recycle those batteries and do all kinds of extra environmental stuff, because we're not like, oh, where are we going to get our next, vape card type of thing. We get those people in Texas to be able to have. I just feel like feeding Texas some shit while I've got the chance with you, because there's nobody more proud than Texas, right? And you
Yeah,
can't tell people in Texas what to do. So
right.
why are they letting them tell them, oh yeah, you have to lock people up and spend your money on weed, when you know damn well everybody loves it?
Yeah, I
So
actually
I
have a
feel like,
group from cannabis that may come on that, or from Texas rather, that's trying to push for better cannabis. So,
yeah,
um,
I feel like that's the psychological hook for Texas, is like, come on, Texas,
that's
you don't
honestly when we started
around
talking, that's what I would always tell them. Like I'd be like, "Oh, do it big in
the
Texas.
feds.
Oh, freedom, Texas." I'd be giving them shit all the
Afraid of
time,
the
and that's
feds. Yeah.
yeah. Like, "Oh, yeah, you guys are so independent. You believe in so much freedom." Yet
Yeah.
and actually, that's something that Chris Becker, who's been on this show, he's from the Honeybee Collective. He said on well, he didn't say it on this show. He said it on Twitter. Um, he was saying that it was during the pandemic and somebody from Texas came up and they said, "Hey, sir, you're gonna have to put on a mask." He said, "Oh, sorry, I left it in my truck because we believe in freedom in my state." And they were like, "Aren't you from Texas? Like you can't even buy weed legally there."
Right.
It's like funny. Like,
Exactly. That touches on the like our feet in both worlds. We're aliens. Things don't make sense.
yeah,
It's everywhere. And I think that's just really the script in cannabis is having to accept the things that don't make sense.
yeah. And this is the
Very
reference. I
nice.
just wanted to put proof to the pudding. This is from
Yeah.
November 13th, 2019, and it doesn't seem to be from, I mean, I don't know, a hemp producer. It could be, but it says one of the illicit products, Maui Wowie, contained 1,500 times the legal limit of pesticides. That's no
Oh,
good. You know, that's
yeah, that's horrible.
if this
And
stuff
like you said,
is,
because there isn't a consistent requirements everywhere. And I like I don't even want to bring it up because this is something that's being brought up at conferences, at all the breakout at all of the sessions where they have the speakers. They'll say, "Oh, we need these standardized testing requirements and all these standardized SOPs for consistency so people know what they're getting." And being that that's been 10 years ago and we're still talking about it, I think it does go back to the prohibition is really the problem because people can get away with stuff and there's just this uneven application of the law all the time. I felt like there was one other thing I wanted to ask you before we got off. Maybe I can
sure.
think of it. Um, I don't know what it was. You'll have to think of something. You'll
Oh,
have to
it's
cut
okay.
this out.
We no, it's all good. We were talking about like hemp and everything else like that. Again, I just think that if we are worried about regulating it, there are tools at our disposal. These are not unlicensed businesses, from what I understand. And if they truly are, I feel like that's an even easier route to take care of it. But if they are licensed and they're selling infringed like products that are clearly infringed to minors, intoxicating products, like that's something I think we can all agree is a problem and we should like not allow maybe to happen, you know?
Most
Um,
definitely. Just the integrity. I can't believe, I think, I don't consider myself such a rule follower, but I can't imagine investing in a store, a license, and advertising and all of that inventory, and then selling an unregulated product, especially to a minor. I would be so afraid of, any agency coming in and taking my freedom, my business,
yeah,
my everything. So there's just a lot of people who are very willing to play in that gray area.
exactly. And yeah, that's definitely an issue. And I feel like that's, if you look, I've I've heard some critiques about representatives for Representative Ford's bill, and he actually came onto the show to talk about it. I will try to link that in the show notes for folks if you want to see the interview because we talk about psychedelics and much more. But his bill would essentially mandate testing, the same state testing from the state operators have to go through, same taxes on the products, same age limit, 21 plus, but from what I understand it, no license limitations, and they can also be sold in retail stores. Which so it seems
Oh,
like it on its face, if those things are true, and I had urged people to read the fine print of these bills, try to make sure to understand it. But let's just say my understanding of that is true. It seems to address not only the concerns of the industry, hey, it's unfair, you don't have to pay the taxes on your products. Hey, we shouldn't sell to kids, and hey, these products shouldn't be dangerous. Seems to address all those things. What say you if
I
that's true?
say that this is again something everyone will hate. Why? Because it's an agreement between the two opposing sides,
Mm,
and that it is a slow walk into having society as a whole accept what we know is that legal, illegal, black market, call it what you will, it's available everywhere, and for all intents and purposes it is legal after that hemp bill passed.
yeah.
That I think that was the turning point where the curtains were ripped open
Hmm.
and It was kind of oh, we can find workarounds for getting the cannabinoids we want out there. And the same way in Oklahoma, where they were handing out those medical cannabis license basically to anybody who had the $2,500 to pay for it, it makes it an untenable, ungovernable environment because they don't know who's got a license. It would take hundreds of people all day long to go in and check all of the regulatory requirements and the testing. And do you have the HVAC you're supposed to have here? And here's your fines. We're shutting you down. No, we're going to court. So even though we know by our close observation of the evolution of the industry that it is for all intents and purposes legal, it's important for the people who are not on board yet to feel like it's being slowly spoon-fed to them with a little sugar on top and saying, here, look, we're providing it in a regulated manner so that you don't have to, send troops of soccer moms down to the state capitol to protest the situation.
Yeah. I will say that I've heard the idea from Oklahoma and stuff, and I was recently talking to a business owner who was thinking of opening up a restaurant in this area. They used to have a restaurant in this area. Um, they they have restaurants around the state, I would say mid-state, and one that's like an hour away. But again, they were thinking about moving back into the area. But they consulted with the local businesses in the area, and there was a town that's about 15 minutes away from where I lived, and they respectfully asked him not to build his diner there because they had, since he had left, because like I said, he had been here before. Since he had left, they've built up a good, customer base and people that come from my town and around, and they would respectfully just prefer him not to set back up around here, and he obliged. And I thought it was interesting. Another thing that happened in town, that there's a car wash in my town, but it's been shut down for a while. But there's been this sign up near a gas station that says like car wash coming soon. It's this like really nice sign, and it's been up for a while. And I asked somebody that like knows in the politics of my town. I was like, "What's going on with this car wash? When is it gonna fucking open? I'd like to be able to wash my fucking car in town." And they said, "Cole, that sign is to prevent somebody from building another car wash right now because."
Oh, you really have seen now the reality that I think on that small scale, you get to understand it on a simple level that, okay, imagine the grandparents of the people who are the chief of police. They were probably had an uncle who was the chief of police. And then all their friends that they graduated from high school with got placed in certain city council positions. And this is sort of we have buddy business up in here, and we all get together and decide who gets to have a piece of the pie. So do you feel like that was somewhat what you learned?
Well, yes, and what I learned, like what I felt like I learned, like comparable to the like to what we're doing with cannabis, is like we're putting these rigid set of rules to prevent what people are clearly already working out with many different businesses.
Oh, I see. So that you're like, leave the businesses to work it out amongst themselves with the community and the zoning and the things like that, and they can decide on their own what they want to have.
Yeah, because some towns still, I believe, banned can have
Opt
banned
out.
cannabis, and like Naperville for a while had banned cannabis. So like that's an option if you're really worried about. But I would just say, because honestly, that the talking point about Oklahoma on like the other side of the sword, people from like smart approaches to marijuana, a prohibitionist group will use that. They say like, oh, states like Oklahoma or Colorado, these people would come in and operate under the guise of legality and like sell in town and then ship it out of state. And my argument to that, when I talk to them, obviously that's, you're not saying it in that angle, but you're kind of touching on the same topic. Um, my argument to them is that, well, if states around them would just fucking legalize, and I realize that that's going to be a hard case with Indiana, Like what's happening is there's pent up demand. And I really believe that it'll all work out. And will it be a bloodbath like Oregon if you opened it up? Maybe, but like I asked the guy that regulated Oregon's cannabis program through that, which Oregon's always used as kind of the example of exactly what we're talking about. Like they're like, "Whoa, this is what happened." And he talked about it. Yeah, everybody applied for a license and a lot of people went out of business because the prices just went to the bottom of the barrel. But when asked, and I asked him again, but I'll give credit where credit is due, Vice News asked him first, like, would you do it again? And he clarified, first of all, I'm a regulator. I didn't write the rule. So like this wasn't my choice in the first part. But if you're asking me my opinion, um, yeah, we should do it again that way because while it was tough to see people go out of business, I would rather see people have the chance to participate than be told you are not allowed to participate because the net you applied too late or you whatever. And like, what say you? Sorry, I've been going on for a while
Oh,
about
no,
that
no, I
idea.
loved it. I loved every minute of it. What I say about it is that same race to the bottom that you were describing in Oklahoma and Oregon, where so much is produced so quickly that some businesses just can't remain profitable. That is going to happen, but just a little bit more slowly. And it really does leave a person who's less well funded um, to just essentially be purchased by a larger company. So isn't that what's happening, just a little bit differently? And Michigan seems to be I see things being posted about how they've lost 22,000 caregivers, and these are the people who used to grow on behalf of qualified medical cannabis patients in Michigan. And from day one, because of that, I call it the Cassandra complex, meaning that I could see down the road that I'm like, there's just no way people can survive under these conditions. So I guess for my part is that if you want to get into a business that is like going to Vegas or buying a lottery ticket, at the very least, go in with as much information, gather all the available information before you make a decision with millions of dollars. Um, I really just feel that as much as there's going to be tears for a long, long time with businesses that get ground under in very uncomfortable circumstances. And you know how you were saying earlier about bad actors with the quality of products. There is no shortage of bad actors, and they can pretend to be on the up and up, but they are um, built in a world of competition, and that is what fuels them and excites them. And this is one of these very Wild West type of growing industries. And even though I think a lot of people got on board after still having that memory of Silicon Valley, remember? And those crazy internet startup things. And this was going to be the next opportunity to do something like that. So when you saw the MedMens get all that funding and go completely cool and, spend all that beautiful money and then not be able to stay in business, it's really heartbreaking to see all those resources that could have been otherwise distributed go that way. But we've attracted this business through the step-by-step incremental legalization and siloed in different states has brought that brings the allure for the financial people and the people who are hungry to have another opportunity like the internet startup phase. So like we said in the beginning, it's almost like a telenovela where once you're here, the ups and the downs are so dramatic that it's really just hard to take your eye off of it even for a second. So uh, for my small part, having gotten into it with a lot of naivety, thinking, oh, it'll be so valuable for me to do what I consider the marketing and the education. It was so much more of a competition, fighting for the top type of a situation that I realized in order for me to have, I just want to just a little oligarchy coin just fall out of their pocket, and maybe I can have a little something for myself. So with my mission to educate, I was also like, hey, here's a fun product, and if it takes off, that might be my way with my vaping prop to have my little sustaining piece that keeps me attached and to be a play a part in the industry.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to kind of clarify that I said earlier, and actually I was quoting somebody, but at least what I meant when I pitched it over to you when I asked like was legalizing it the problem. I want to be clear, I'm not saying prohibition like that we would keep that. This is actually a really good example that I just recently had a very interesting episode. I got to look up the number really quick. It is episode 78. I sit down with Rusty to talk about cannabis in Hawaii, and people may know that Hawaii's adult use measure just failed. And I
Yeah,
asked him about that. And from his standpoint, and we agreed ultimately at the end of the show, it's like it seems like okay that that happened. And I know that that sounds weird because it's only medical in Hawaii. There are only 8 stores from what he told me. That sounds pretty bad, right? But
it's super bad.
listen to this though. It's a caregiver there's a vibrant caregiver market. Everybody's allowed, like it's very easy to get your medical card and everybody's allowed to home grow. It's like basically like as much as you want.
Okay, so under the medical law, it does pose as an adult use law.
I would say it's, yeah, very flexible. Yeah.
And did Rusty and you, upon observation, because I haven't, all I saw was the headline that you mentioned about it failing.
Hmm.
And did you feel like the regulatory process was going to turn it into the capitalistic shark frenzy that we were just talking about?
Yeah, that's kind of what he was saying. Like maybe there would be just a few more stores, like no more than it, still the 8, just kind of like we only had 55. And I always like to use that number for starts because it's always like if you would have asked anybody before weed was on sale legally, like how many people are selling weed right now in Illinois? I'd be like, God, it's got to be like 5,000 people. Like that's a low ballpark. Low
In a
ballpark.
in a state with almost 13
Of
million
course.
people?
Yeah, right. Five, like I'm even thinking like I don't even want to start saying numbers because I'm high right now, but do you get my point? It would be way bigger than 55, you know?
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh my God. And so do you see how it makes it hard for you to feel sorry for the well-moneyed people who got those licenses and now they're worried about Delta and hemp? And I'm like, but you had all these years of somewhat of an no competition market, really. I mean,
Yeah. E-
comparatively.
Exactly. And I always like to say that as much as I talk about this issue on the show, I don't know if I've ever clearly elaborated this on the show, but I like to say to my like friends and stuff if we have a like this passionate conversation about this topic that I don't know if I were in their shoes that I'd do it any differently. As much
100%.
as much as I believe that I would, as much as I sit here and say like this is wrong and I wouldn't be able to sleep at night and no, I think I could probably sleep pretty fucking well in a
Yeah,
nice
yeah,
bed.
yeah. They have, and especially in the primordial goo that is the Chicago companies that came out of Chicago, they changed the world.
Yeah.
That they can sleep at night knowing that they did that. And I think that it's just my Midwestern girl practicality that if I'm going to start up a business with millions and millions of dollars of other people's money and then open that stock market up and take even more money, all I would be worried about is making profits and making returns for those investments. And just as the Canopy example and the MedMen example, I think that those are examples of a lot of money that got lost, and it's just like everybody just walks away. And that is just something for me as a Midwesterner. I don't know what my character is that I'd be like, oh no, my God, all those people lost money. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no regrets, right? These are high rollers. They know what it's like to start up something that has been untested and roll with the punches, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And let's see if we don't. I think this has got to be fair use because it's on YouTube. Let's just play a real quick clip because, you know, Obviously I don't wish financial hardship on anybody, but if South Park's coverage of MedMen is true, let's just watch the clip.
Ever heard of MedMen?
Yeah, I think so.
We have a common problem. Homegrown weed.
We're just worried about safety, you know. So you guys want to put our money together and we go f this town up so nobody can ever grow their own weed again? I'm totally in.
So I only bring that up because I know MedMen is out of business and had a lot of trouble closing locations and stuff like that. But I think if you Google MedMen Home Grow, they do. Yeah, there was coverage in Marijuana Moment for MedMen backing a proposed marijuana legalization ballot initiative that makes no provision for home growing. That's what that was about. I think it's important to realize, though, that the current adult use measure in Florida is backed by True Leave, and it also
Yeah.
explicitly does not have a home grow measure. So,
Oh, it's insidious.
yeah.
Hey, you've got to do me a solid, and I'm sure you've got 55 people lined up to do your vlog with, but have you heard of Elliot Lewis, the CEO of Catalyst?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, have you interviewed him?
No, I need to though. I can't remember
Yeah,
what I
because
commented on, but he liked my comment, and I need to like reach out and get him on because go ahead.
if you his head is exploding on a daily basis, and it's the David and Goliath, and I think that like he scares the shit out of me because I would never poke a hornet's nest like the government, because if they have had it with your shit, they will come down on you with everything they've got. And I don't want anybody looking at me, right? I don't want the popo. I don't want the government. I just want to go about my happy business and avoid all that lawyerly problem. But he is so livid at what is absolutely justified that it's a no-win situation. The taxing is insane. People are delinquent, and he feels deeply, and I think can probably give the receipts, that it goes all the way to the top with all the favors and the, I know these buddies, and you're up here with us in
Yep.
the connected thing. And he's just such a gritty guy that I just think that you and he will have a blast.
Well, I gotta hop over to I just realized it's 5:30. I gotta hop over to a Cannabis Equity Coalition meeting. I don't know if you'll be over there.
I love
But
them. I won't be there, but I wanted to ask you, do you have dozens of events planned for your 420 week?
I actually don't have one planned.
Oh.
Actually I do. I plan to spend it with a family member. So
Okay, cool.
this
All
that
right.
enjoys cannabis. So
Do a little bits, do a little celebrating for me. Hey, we had such a great time. The time went by so fast. Go have a fantastic week. Thank you so much, Cole.
yeah, Kirsten, let's do this again, and I'm sure I'm gonna see you soon. Unfortunately, I won't see you at this upcoming Cannabis Innovation Lab, or whatever the event is with Grown
The
In
summit.
1871. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. And but yeah, unfortunately, I won't see you there, but I'm sure I will see you at an upcoming event. Like, for example, I would love to see you. We have to plan it out yet, and I really shouldn't tease these details, but Maddie said maybe we can work it out. So I'm working on this like mini documentary, and we're thinking about doing like a private screening for the community, and it'd be cool to have like somebody like you there, and
Oh,
that if it was at Blue Island or something. So
right. You say, Maddie, I'm there. She is the golden child. She's fantastic. Yeah,
yeah,
anything
she's
that
the
she's
best.
got going on, I'll be there for.
Her, Nathan, Depeche, all of them are the best. I have to make sure to
Yeah,
say all
they're
the
fabulous.
Shanky, Danny, yeah, or, yeah, all of them. So
Right. And like you said, after all of this shit talking that we talked about the industry, we've met so many phenomenal people, talented
yeah.
people who are going to make a big difference.
Oh, and I don't know if I ever clearly said this before we get off the air. As bad as the program is, and as much as I bitch about it, the only reason I do this podcast is because we legalized it. Right?
Exactly. You were like, I'm not going to come out and start talking about cannabis until
Even
I
though I
feel
had a
like
med card at the time, I just didn't feel comfortable. But when it became legal, I was like, all right, well, it's just like beer now, kind of, not really, but
And really, you're making it more accessible, less stigmatized. And don't you feel now that you're done it, you're like, oh yeah, I don't even know what I was so worried about. I mean, once you kind of get over that hump,
Right.
and look, aren't you so glad you did it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
It just
because I
led to
got to
so
meet
many.
people like you too.
Yeah,
You know.
we are awesome. People who smoke weed pretty much are cool.
Oh yeah. Well, Kirsten, thank you again for your time. Once again, folks, the links to connect with Kirsten and to get your own vaping prop will be in the podcast description. Kirsten, I hope I see you sooner than later.
All right, fantastic. Take care.
You too. Bye.